Now loading this month's Leadership Live, where we dive in deep with today's top MedTech leaders, allowing you the chance to learn from the best. Leadership Live starts now.
Hi, I'm Joe McClung, and welcome to another edition of our Leadership Live. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to have Mike Kreitzinger, who is the Senior Director of Clinical Strategy and Partnership with Illumina, a very exciting organization, as we all know, in genomics. Mike, I've known you for years. I've got a chance to work with you a lot, but other people aren't so lucky. So tell us a little bit about you, your story, and of course, the great things that are happening at Illumina.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I love watching this when it's online. You guys are producing it. So, my story, I live here in Tampa. I just moved back from Dallas with my wife about 3 years ago or so, and been in the medical space for a long, long time. Started out as a sales rep with Physician Sales and Service, which is now part of McKesson, and working for PSS, selling table paper and gloves and everything. Was fortunate enough to move to a couple different companies, diagnostics, and then joined a company called BioSite years ago that really got me going in point of care diagnostics. And then was able then to start my leadership journey there as well. Been with Illumina for the last 10 years, had a couple other things in between there, but been with Illumina for the last 10 years in a couple different leadership roles. This new job is the last one I've had for the last 2 years now, is really focused on how do we create an organization, sales team, and products, and everything else that goes along with it to really meet the needs of the clinical customer, whether it's in healthcare side or whether it's a clinical commercial organization. And then the other part is how do we make these partnerships work? So we know in genomics, we can't do it all. And so we need other partners to help us, whether it's content or whether it's back-end bioinformatics. And so I work a lot with our sales team and the BD team on kind of putting those two things together. But Illumina, as you know, there's a lot of stuff going on now. We're super busy and super focused on how do we help those customers, our customers, get solutions to really big problems, whether it's oncology or infectious disease or what have you, so that they can create the assays and for the physicians and most important for the patients.
Yeah, there's new innovation, new findings happening. Seems like daily. I see
daily.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now you've been in leadership. We've talked, almost 25 years in med device. So, what do you think makes a good leader in this unique industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the for me, the biggest thing is leadership focused on people, right? And have the ability to react very quickly to change that happens in the market. And so for me, those are the two things. It doesn't really matter necessarily what the title of what your title is, what the company's title is, but leadership for me is all about people. Right? It's about making sure that you're growing the people. So I have this saying: grow the person, grow the business.
I love that.
And if you grow people, the rest of the outcomes will really take care of themselves. So for me, it's really just focused on that. The company that you work with or the industry that they're in, that can be super dynamic, and that can make that part very, very challenging from a retention perspective or a training perspective. But at the end of the day, it's all about making sure the folks that are on the ground and work for you are successful and happy and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's just understanding this is a dynamic market. So you need to be prepared to be a constant learner, constant change. If that's not what you're in for, you're in the wrong space.
That's right. That's right.
And then number two is, I love that. What was that quote? Say it again. I'm going to
grow the person, grow the business.
Grow the person, grow. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah. I did. That's okay.
Okay. All right. I like that. Now I'm sure in those 25 years, you've probably done everything exactly correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Just what are a couple lessons you've learned the hard way that you could share to this audience?
Yeah. I think, a couple of them kind of come to mind. I mean, one is, making sure you're listening. I mean, there's a lot of times as leaders, we get wrapped up in what we're trying to accomplish, or the noise from our boss, or the leadership team, or the board, or whatever. And so we have to really focus and listen on what our people need and what we want to try to accomplish. I think that's a big mistake that leaders make. I think sometimes, making the mistakes of trying to move too quickly without having all the information that you need. Right? For me, there's this really nice dance of moving at the pace that you need to, but also having the information that you need in order to make that right decision.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing is sometimes as leaders we forget we think we know it all, but we need to never stop learning. Like we need to constantly be in whatever it is, whether it's an outside mentor, whether it's books or podcasts or whatever, stay in the knowledge base that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, you've got to stop and listen.
Absolutely.
Right? Not get distracted by the noise.
Yeah.
And that gets back to your first point of being with people, right?
That's right.
You can't be people focused if you're not listening to them.
That's right. That's
right. And in this dynamic motion, you got to be able to constantly learn how do you sharpen that axe? What new advice? What new tools to become a better leader?
Right.
And I think in the past, sometimes you just get moving fast and you don't take the time.
That's right.
To sharpen the axe.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what I heard you say.
Rely too much on what we think we know versus what we could know.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I'm asking Mike a few more questions, but I know he's got a lot of knowledge we're not going to unlock, and you probably have some questions yourself. So make sure you post it below, and we'll pull those into this, and we'll ask at the end here. So post those questions below. Now, Mike, top performers in an organization drive change.
Mm-hmm.
How do you develop top performers? What's worked for you?
Yeah. So I think first of all, it's identifying them right quickly, and making sure you've got that making sure then you can lead that person appropriately. The way you manage people, there's always an underlying way that you do it because there needs to be consistency to it. But there's also things that motivate people or ways that you communicate with people, right? So I think for the high pose and high potential folks, it's identifying them very quickly and then giving them what they need in order to succeed. Many times you'll have a high performance person who, they get stagnant in what they're doing.
Yeah.
They need more challenge, so you try to push them into that. Maybe there's things where it's a stretch goal or a stretch project that they can work on. Those are the kind of things. And the other thing I'd say that's really important is involve them in the leadership part, right?
Right.
I mean, clearly they're smart folks and they're really good at what they do because you consider them high potential. So bring them into the fold. Say, hey, bounce things off of them or bring them into a meeting you would normally bring them into, just to kind of get them acclimated to some of those bigger topics and bigger questions. And you might just learn something from them.
Yeah. No, I love it. I got to identify, out of the gate.
Yeah.
So you're kind of focused on their needs. Challenge them.
Yeah.
I think I had another leader tell me at one point that great people love a great challenge.
That's right.
So find those challenges. And I love the third thing, bring them into some of the decisions, because they're sometimes closer to the problem.
Absolutely.
And make that, make those well. And I can imagine it not only keeps them engaged, but they're going to be better prepared when those opportunities and big projects come up.
Yep.
They're going to have already had practice.
Absolutely.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Now, finding those, this is near dear to my heart, finding those individuals and evaluating talent.
Mm-hmm.
What's worked for you?
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do as a leader, right? Because sometimes it's difficult to do in a very short period of time. You have an interview process, or maybe on Zoom, or maybe it's face to face. But sometimes it's hard to get that out of a person in that amount of time, whether it's 2 hours or what have you. So I think part of it is really looking at the body of work, what they've done in the past. And if you know some folks that have references, it's a pretty small industry when you think about it, kind of triangulating what they're all about. So I think that's really important. What I look for, though, I really look for the attitude and the effort and the intensity that those folks bring. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily all the accolades that are won and that type of thing, but I want the person who is going to go out and achieve that stuff with that inner drive, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we understand their why, like identifying their why. Why are they doing this? Why do they want to be successful with it? Why do they want to work at this organization?
Yeah.
So I think digging into that part is really, really important, and less about the numbers and achievement piece, although that's important. But I think it's important to kind of identify as quickly as you can who that person is, what makes them tick.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Understand their why, their long-term motivation.
Yeah.
That keeps them going.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes you look at numbers and that old saying is you woke up on third base and thought you hit a triple. That's happened with some people, right? So you got to be able to tease that out and understand that core attitude.
Yeah.
That core drive.
Absolutely.
Because even in a very complex environment like Illumina, you can teach them with the right motivation, the right drive.
Absolutely. Yeah. To me, it's the core, right? So you can be the smartest person in the world, but not have the determination to get up Monday morning at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or whatever, and go work. It's hard to teach that. So you got to identify the right folks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people listening here that they're not leaders now, right? They are that hypo. but they want to be tapped for leadership.
Yeah.
What would you tell those individuals?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, make sure your boss knows you want to do that. Like, make your intentions known, and if you want to write out a plan, say, this is my 5-year plan for development. I think what happens many times is folks who want to get developed think that the development plan is owned by their boss. It's not. You own your development plan, right? It may be a Workday somewhere and other people may have access to it, but ultimately you're responsible for making sure your boss and others know what you want to accomplish. So for me, that's really important. The other thing is, look for ways to involve yourself in projects and ideas and concepts that, maybe you haven't had exposure to. And then, get your brain into some leadership stuff, whether it's podcasts or whether it's books, however you learn. Continue to try to find some feed your mind and feed that information. And then lay those goals out and then go after them, right? And then find some folks either internally that can mentor you or externally that can mentor you, really to try to get to the goals you want to accomplish. But for me, really identifying it right away is important, and voicing it. And don't leave your development up to somebody else. Make it your thing.
No, I love that. I think it starts with that ownership, that personal ownership, and everything you listed to do, whether it's finding that mentor, listening to podcasts, letting people know, volunteering for opportunities. Guess what? They control all that.
That's right.
That isn't something they have to wait for the company to do for them, right? Absolutely. They can be proactive in doing that. And the ones that do it, I know as a former leader, when I had, I was hiring and promoting someone for a national sales trainer. Guess who I selected? The guy that took the initiative and wrote training as a rep.
That's right. Big surprise, right?
Big surprise, right? I mean, I didn't ask him to do it. He did it. So when I had a promotion, that's what I went to.
Yeah. Another thing, Joe, that I was just thinking about when you were mentioning that is, I talk to folks all the time who say, hey, I want to be a leader. I don't know if I'm ready, but I want to interview for this job. Don't be, in my opinion, don't be afraid to do that. Because that gives you a lot of exposure to people. I can't tell you how many times that we'll interview someone who may not, quote, be ready. And then in the middle of the process, someone on the interview panel goes, man, I didn't know this person. I didn't know what made them tick. And sometimes that sets you up for the next one if you don't get the first one.
Right. And I can tell you, if you waited till you're ready for every single change in your career, you'll be waiting a long time because you never feel ready, right?
No.
There's always that imposter syndrome, right, as you start out.
I agree.
No matter, all great leaders will tell you that.
I agree, Joe.
So I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but please comment below, and we're going to pull in some additional questions here and ask Mike live. And I know there's some other great things. This one's our fun one.
All
right. Who's your favorite superhero? And why?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't watch a lot of movies or comics, but I'd probably have to say Superman.
Yeah.
And for a couple reasons. One, he tries to, live in the background, right? As all good leaders really should, and kind of go about his business quietly as Clark Kent or whatever. And then he also has a weakness, right? His kryptonite is his weakness. And I think we all as leaders have a weakness as well.
Yeah.
So I would probably say Superman, but there's probably a newer one out that I don't know about.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know them all either, but I think there's really good points. And I do like that analogy of he stands back as Clark Kent. Yeah. He doesn't, it doesn't make it about him.
That's right.
He makes it about the job and being successful, saving people. But that the weakness, that kryptonite, and I think for leaders, and people in general, I typically find sometimes their superpower, their greatest strength, is usually their kryptonite.
That's right.
It's a good way to identify that. Well, I want to take a few questions from the FloodGate family. I got a few here. One from Renee. Hey, this is a good one. I like what's one piece of advice you would give your younger self at the start of your career?
Yeah. Wow. I'd probably need a long time to talk to my younger self for all those things. But I definitely say listen more. I think especially when we're young and starting out, I started out as a sales rep like a lot of leaders do and then moved into leadership. And I think we know it all, right? We think we're top of the rankings and making a bunch of money and it's we know everything. But I would say listen, listen not only to, the folks around you, but listen to other, feed your brain with other stuff. Definitely, I think is important. And then, I would say to try to help me as a younger person, and just understand that it's all this job's all about people, like making sure you have this personal connection to the other people that are on your team and that you work with. So, I think we forget about that sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I know that, I thought I knew it all when I was young and didn't need to ask, especially if I got a little taste of success. I definitely thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
So, but stopping and realizing and listening, I think
Yeah.
is important. And that listening really dovetails into
Yeah.
being about people.
Absolutely.
Being relational, because that's
Absolutely.
really the impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. I want to take another question from Brittany. Mentors that or concepts that inspired you, your approach to leadership.
Yeah, I think been very fortunate to have several folks in my life, and still in my life today, that I go and ask questions about leadership and jobs and whatever life, right? My wife's a great mentor to me too. So I've been very fortunate with that. But I think the biggest lesson probably was when I took my first leadership job and it started out with a small team. And my boss at the time said, this job is all about people. And you should never forget that. Like, never forget at the end of the day, it's about people. And there was an example that I saw from him where another member of our team who, his wife had a difficult difficult pregnancy and birth of their young daughter. He ended up spending 3 or 4 days at the hospital with them constantly. And for me, that was a great lesson that at the end of the day, these people are people, right? And they have lives. And so this goes back to grow the person, grow the business. And for me, that concept in leadership of it's all about the people that you work with was stuck with me. And hopefully, not being perfect and making mistakes, but hopefully that gets conveyed on my team and how I approach leadership.
Yeah, no, really going beyond not just their work person.
Yeah.
Them as a whole person, and
That's
understanding what their goals are, supporting them with that,
Yeah.
and being a vehicle. I think that's some great advice and mentoring, and it's you have to be constantly reminded of that. Because
Absolutely.
several times, the days get busy, the meetings get long. Take a pause.
The numbers get big. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you grow the people, you grow the business. We got one more question here. Okay, you weren't leading in MedTech.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think you'd be doing?
Wow, it's kind of all that I've known, right? Coming right out of school doing it. But I remember right about a year or so before I graduated, I thought I was going to go to law school.
Yeah.
And I people tell me I'm a good arguer, so maybe a lawyer. I don't know. All my attorney friends are probably laughing, but maybe that'd be a great place. I don't know. I don't have a lot of other talent, so I'd say pro golfer, but that ain't gonna happen either. So
no, unless they start doing high score.
They can make it.
Yeah, I'm a value golfer. You see, I get more strokes per green feet than most people out there. So I'm down to less than $1 a stroke. It's really good. Even on expensive courses.
Figured it away.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Exactly. Well, Mike, thank you so much. There was a ton of knowledge.
Right.
I mean, these insights and focusing on people, being humble, being a constant learner. How many times you mentioned just, being able to learn. I think we've all taken those in. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
We're going to be monitoring. So post some other questions. If there's things we haven't covered, post them below. We'd love to know your thoughts, what's important to you. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, man. Good to see you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.